Of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Coming to you live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, streaming live right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Gaily Show. This is The Gaily Show. I'm your host, JP Debragosian. In the studio with me is our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
And making all the magic happen in our control room is Brett Johnson.
Hey, getting there, guys.
Literally.
Yay, it's Wednesday. Very excited. We have later in the show, Christopher Kane, the White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, is going to join us to break down a lot of news happening out of Washington. One really quick note I want to make here. Newsmax, if you heard that promo
Lord.
in the break, Newsmax is not a sponsor of AM 950. Please do not go to Newsmax and listen to their propaganda. Sometimes this happens. I don't want to get into all the stuff around it, but they are not a sponsor. So if you're tuning in going, what the heck is going on? Not a sponsor of AM 950. We are the progressive voice of Minnesota. You can call in to our show and join the conversation. Our phone number is 952-946-6205. That's 952-946-6205. You can also chat with me on our YouTube live stream. I am checking with that periodically throughout the show. So, chat with us there. We'll talk about what you're saying on the air. If it's, useful and productive to the conversation.
Not from Newsmax. Yeah.
Yes, no, we're not taking any of that. I will block you if you start doing that. Kick you right out of that chat. All right, so to kick us off right now, District 60 had a primary yesterday for a special election that is coming up here. Jim, do you want to break down the results that we saw?
I would love to. I find this exciting, especially after a bad election. It's nice to have something positive happen. And District 60, I used to live in when I lived in Northeast Minneapolis. And they had a primary yesterday. There were about 5,600 votes cast, something like that. And 5,400 of those votes were for one of 7 different Democrats. So it was a 96% Democratic result. Now, some of the folks maybe weren't the most serious candidates where they only had a few dozen votes, but there were 3 significant people, I thought. We talked about a couple of them yesterday, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. I think it's probably Duran. It could be Doran, but I feel like it's Duran Clark. He was the DFL endorsed candidate. He got 38% of the vote. Monica Meyer, who I wish I had mentioned yesterday. She's our lesbian sister, and I didn't mention her on the show. My fault. She received almost 35% of the vote. And then Peter Wagenius, who I have worked with in the past, received 23% of the vote. So those were the 3 sort of contending candidates, I think, for this spot. And then the Republican who won with 153 votes. So it doesn't take much in a heavy Democratic. In fact, the other candidate, the other Republican, being kind of a smart aleck, was saying, well, at least I got, 20% of the vote or something. It's very funny. But so good for that. Now, here's the important thing. The election that this primary set up is 2 weeks from yesterday. So the 28th of January, we will, you can see, reestablish our lead in the Minnesota State Senate. This will get us back to a 1-vote advantage where we always should have been. I'm very sorry for Kari Diedzik's passing and for her family, but this is what we need to do to overcome that obstacle or that tragedy. So congratulations, Duran Clark. And I'm not familiar with him. I obviously need to do some backgrounding on him now, but he won, and I'm sure he'll do a great job. It's exciting.
So when we get back, so the Senate had a very lovely, mature power sharing agreement put into place between the GOP and the DFL. They started their session off lovely yesterday. It's like, oh, look at the grown-ups in the room, as opposed to the nonsense that was happening in the House. So does that mean then that the power sharing agreement is only until the DFL reestablishes their majority after this
Well,
election?
yeah, I mean, it was always expected that we would have a one vote advantage, as we all the great things that happened in the last session were with a one vote advantage. So we were back to that threshold. And then unfortunately Kerry Dietzig passed. And so we had to redo that again with this very, very democratic seat. So we're back to where we started. I don't know what they're going to do in the interim for the next 2 weeks, but I assume they're just passing that time.
We will look into that and provide more up to date information, because everything that's happening with the Minnesota legislature seems to be all up in the air. And I've really appreciated what Matt has been doing and his show, Matt McNeil from 3 to 5, and Brett Johnson doing as the producer of that show, keeping us up to date on literally hourly updates as everything keeps changing in there. It's not what I expected to see here in Minnesota. Brett, do you know what happens when the DFL gets back a one vote majority in the Senate? Is the power sharing agreement over at that point?
Yeah, I actually just happened to talk to Patrick Coolican of the Reformer about that yesterday. And yeah, their agreement basically says as soon as that one vote majority is restored, they will go back to, well, the 34-33 majority and get a new Senate majority leader. So I think that's January 28th where that agreement expires. So
Okay.
Senate seems to be doing a little better job than the House on.
They're
getting this all
behaving like
straightened out.
Minnesotans,
Yes.
which I entirely admire. I don't know what happened in the lower house, but wow.
So does that, I mean, did Patrick have any insight into why the Senate was able to do this so maturely, diplomatically, and the House devolved into chaos?
What I've always heard, this is more anecdotally, not specifically from Patrick, is that, as you kind of said, Jim, it is the more adult of the House where people behave more cordially. I think it even goes down to like the dress code of what you have to wear in the House versus the
Wow.
Senate. So I think naturally that just kind of comes with the institution where they work together a little bit more.
Interesting. I
side,
didn't
yeah.
know that.
Well, I'm a transplanted Minnesotan, but I think Minnesotans expect state government to work a lot better than it is appearing to work in the House. So I think the Republicans should be aware that people are watching them, and this kind of
See, I'm coming
discord
from
is not helping.
Michigan. I'm coming from Michigan, which is I'm used to these dirty tricks.
Are you? Well, yeah, there
and
you
the
go.
gerrymandering and the nonsense and I remember having a conversation with a candidate who was specifically recruited. I was working at a news station actually, and of all the people, the meteorologist was recruited, and he was talking about how he's like, yeah, you want to be in the GOP, and they were telling me, and it's like, all we do is we just go down there and make fun of the Democrats. That was like one of the main reasons why he wanted to run and be in the legislature in Michigan.
That's
It
leadership.
was
Oh.
bonkers.
We need-
Bonkers is the light way of saying it. The FCC prohibits me from saying the words that I would like to say about the Michigan GOP and what they have been doing. All right, so folks, just because the results were overwhelmingly for the DFL yesterday in the primary, you still have your constitutional obligation to go out and vote. And what I absolutely love about being a resident and a Minnesotan voter is the ethics that we bring to voting. As we found out a week ago, actually today, with Sam Oliver Friedman, who was talking about automatic voter registration and how Minnesota always ranks at the top of the country in terms of getting out the vote and also voter participation. So 2 weeks from yesterday, January 28th, make sure you get out and vote. And actually, you know what? Break the voting record.
Absolutely.
Break the voting record. Show people, send a statement to the legislature that this is what we want to see. We want to see government run correctly, and we want to see the DFL in charge of the Senate. To less thrilling news happened yesterday out of the House in the U.S. Congress. Project 2025 has officially kicked off. The House passed a ban on trans students from participating in girls and women's sports. We're going to get some more analysis about this from Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, who will join us later in the program. But essentially, it passed 218 to 206. This is obviously one of the great issues of our day. You know, it's not climate change. It's not the fires in, Los Angeles. It's not, the inflation or any of that they ran on. No, the great major issue of our day are transgender students who have the gall to say that they want to participate in athletics programs. So here we go. They've kicked off their Project 2025 campaign yesterday in the House by passing a law barring transgender students from participating in women's and girls' sports. Now, thankfully, all but 2 of the Democrats in the House voted against this nonsense. There were 2 Democrats from Texas, Representatives Henry Cuellar and Vincent Gonzalez, who voted for this ban. And then there was a North Carolina Democratic Representative, Don Davis, who voted present. I'm glad to see that there was that level of response from the Democrats, united response to say that they're not going to vote for this. I was worried actually about the vote total after seeing the absolute shenanigans over the holiday break, where they passed the defense spending bill with a ban of trans healthcare,
Right.
tucked away inside of that. And I have to say, our Democratic senators, Klobuchar and Smith, voted for that, which they absolutely did not need to do.
Right.
They were originally on board with Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, who was like, no, we're going to get rid of this. They were supporting her in that effort. But then when it came time to vote on the bill, they reneged and voted for it. And it's weird to me that Senator Baldwin, who lives in I don't think of Minnesota as a flip state. People want to argue that it is. I don't think that it is. Wisconsin absolutely is a flip state, a toss-up state, whatever the correct term there is. And Senator Baldwin, just reelected, found it that, hey, yeah, I'm going to vote against this. And so the idea that, Senators Klobuchar and Smith needed to vote for this, I find to be very suspect. But at least we saw in the House that 206, that the majority was there. And it could have been 215 to 209.
Should have been.
If the Democrats, all of them, would have been on board with this. So here's the thing, though. Like, what is going to happen here? They're trying to get. Oh, wow. Actually, we're going to get into that after the break, because we're coming up on that. And there's a lot to obviously get to. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Please support our sponsors who are sponsoring this show, The Gaily Show, and also AM 950. They are keeping progressive news and analysis on the air. You're listening to The Gaily Show.
Hey, it's Patrick. Your friends and family may be gone now, but the messes that were left behind on your carpets, rugs, upholstery, and more remain. That's why you need to call my cleaning heroes at Zero Res and get 2024 out of your house for good. That's why to start the new year, Zero Res is offering 24% off all cleaning services for the month of January. That's 24% off carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, any surface in your home, and don't forget about your air ducts. Call Zero Res right now at 952-ZERO-RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. But Zero Res isn't just good for cleaning up the post-holiday messes at home. They can make your business look great too. Zero Res was out at the station this fall, and we couldn't have been happier with their quality of work and their professionalism, and the station looks great. So don't wait. Book your home cleaning today. Call 952-ZERO-RES or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
Hi, I'm Peter Solak.
And I'm Adam Ostrowski.
We are here at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces to talk about the joy of live fire cooking. Cooking over a live fire is the oldest and most basic form of cooking.
What's new is in the way a fire is handled and its heat is managed.
It's easier to experience and enjoy the smell and taste of food cooked over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces sells and installs live fire grills, fire pits, and ovens. Let us help you experience the smell, the taste, the fun of cooking with fire.
Pizza was first made and is still best made in an open fire oven. The radiant and conductive heat of a live fire is unmatched for wood roasting and baking artisan breads too.
Come see the many ways you can cook over a live fire.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood and gas units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at woodlandstoves.com. Find the fire that works for you. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
Peace of mind shouldn't cost a fortune. We keep things simple at Schroman Law because we believe planning for your estate and end-of-life care shouldn't be stressful or expensive. Every client relationship starts with a free consultation so clients have the information they need before making important decisions. From there, we work closely with clients to ensure they are choosing the most efficient and cost-effective plans for their specific needs. Schedule a free consultation today at schromenlaw.com. That's SCHROMEN law.com.
This is Andy Otto, your host of Twin Cities Pride Amplified. What do mini horses and AI have in common? Tune in because you're about to find out on our little bit of unhinged episode. That's this Saturday at 3 p.m. We'll talk to our very own Director of Programming, Kelsey Alto, about all the things coming up at Twin Cities Pride, and honestly, some that aren't. That's this Saturday at 3 p.m. right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. I'm your host, JP Debergosian. Jim Pounds, our executive producer, in the studio with me. Our call-in number is 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. What is your take on the ban of transgender students from girls and women's sports? Productive conversations only. And or your thoughts on the primary yesterday in District 60 for the Minnesota Senate. I want to continue breaking down, though, this law. And so it's amending Title IX so that from the bill, sex shall be recognized based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. There is also there is so much that's wrong there because of enforcement. Like, how are you going to determine that? It could be wildly inappropriate and a violation of every person who identifies as a girl, woman, trans woman, like how they're going to be doing that enforcement. And that was a big arguing point yesterday with and before the legislation and all of the debate on it from the House Democrats is how are you going to enforce this? The Biden administration last year had put into had amended Title IX to add to it protections for LGBTQ plus students. Of course, a federal judge in Kentucky knocked that down, I think earlier this year. I don't even know what to say about this, but am I hopeful about the Senate? Maybe I'm hopeful about the Senate because you need 60 senators, right, to get past the filibuster. And there are 45 Democratic senators with obviously Angus King and Bernie Sanders, independents who caucus with the Democrats. So you have 47. I hope that means that this bill won't go anywhere, that the Senate won't be able to pass anything. I can't believe that I'm suddenly happy about the filibuster. I think that should have been gone long time ago. But that being said, Trump obviously will, and the administration will have a lot of ability to continue to implement Project 2025 and a version of this through the Department of Education. Last week, when we had Ellie Krug on, host of the A Legal Trans Woman program that airs here on AM 950s every Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m., she was talking about how the Congress is going to use federal funding to enact these bans and to override, rather to skirt around the ability of states to stop this, right? So a state could have, like Minnesota, constitutional protections based off of gender identity and sexual orientation. The feds, however, have the purse strings, and so they can pull funding, which means then that if they tell a high school or a public school system, you will not get any more federal funding if you continue to allow trans students to participate in girls and women's sports, obviously the school will be in a financial bind and will have to, implement the policy because they can't give up that federal funding. That's the situation that we're going to have here for the next 4 years. But also, again, to the 86% of queer voters who voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, this is the beginning of Project 2025. I don't want you to be thinking that, oh, well, this only has to do with transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary youth. So, that doesn't directly affect me. No, it directly affects everybody within the LGBTQ community. This is the beginning of them going after and implementing Project 2025. And that affects all of us. This is where they're starting with it. And, it's not just the queer community. If you are an ally, you most likely have someone in your family who is LGBTQ, and you may end up having someone come out that you don't know of right now, that you love, a person you dearly hold in your life who may be queer and may be considering coming out, right? You may have if you are a parent of a, infant or, younger child, they may, discover, you may, as you're going along here, discover that this child is suffering from gender dysphoria and will need, treatment, care to, help them, to help them through that and to affirm their identity and to resolve that gender dysphoria. So this, obviously, to the 86% of LGBTQ voters, this clearly, this is about us as a community, and we need to keep that unity going forward because Project 2025 affects all of us and its cruelty. But also, for our allies who are out there, you don't know, you may know some right now, and you may not know others who are queer in your life who may be on that journey of coming out.
This is a curiosity. I know the answer, but I don't understand the justification. So this is banning trans females from participating in female sports, but says nothing about trans males participating in male sports, right? It's only one gender that they object to.
As far as I can tell,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Right.
Because the act, I believe, was labeled something about protecting women's sports. So, and when they were, touting it, they were talking about how they were protecting American women and the integrity of women's sport in the United States. So, I know Jim gives me a lot of is on me because I'm constantly, as a former person who worked in broadcast media, and particularly, broadcast journalism on the TV side of things and taught in a community college, I'm constantly going after media. I do want to mention, though, that there's someone you should pay attention to when it comes to the court and Title IX. I've always been really impressed with their commitment to that, and that person is Dahlia Lithwick with Slate. You will often see her on MSNBC. I've got thoughts about MSNBC as well, but her reporting in Slate really does a very good job of breaking down Title IX and the use of other title, other of that legislation to support gender expansive students and LGBTQ students as well. So you can, if you want to go to Slate, also has a podcast, Amicus, really good coverage there, I feel, over time. And so there, Jim, I finally gave.
Thank you. I'm always saying, well, who should we listen to? Because I know there's a long list of people we shouldn't. So thank you for that, JP.
Well, lots of critique there. But I also, we have a Wisconsin Supreme Court vote date. We're going to be talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court a lot as we get close to that date. But what is that date?
It's April 1st, and I sent my first donation to Susan Crawford's campaign yesterday. And what this does is replace, we hope, if she wins, replaces a progressive judge with another progressive judge. So it really maintains the status quo, but it's really important because, like everything else, it's a one vote.
It's not
margin.
The status quo. It's, it's making sure that the court is there as a check on the utter
insane legislature.
Cruelty of the GOP in that state. We're going to take a break here. After the break, White House correspondent Christopher Kane from the Washington Blade will be here. Keep it tuned to The Gaily Show.
Thank you to everyone who supported AM 950 over the past 5 years. Your contributions have helped us remain one of the few progressive talk stations in the entire country. To show our appreciation, we're offering 2 special gifts this year. First, the official 2025 AM 950 radio calendar. It features photos from Matt McNeil's adventures over the past year and key dates in progressive and AM 950 history. Second,
I can't hear you.
to add this here. Now you should be able to.
Okay, yep, I can hear you now.
So this is welcome to the Gaily Show. We're in our commercial break right now, so we wanted to make sure that you can hear and that your mic is working. Both sound really good. I'm JP. I'm so glad to meet you, and so grateful that you're taking your time to join us to talk about your reporting with the Blade.
Absolutely.
So what you're going to hear in a couple of seconds is the feed, and then we will what's happening live, and then we will get started at 2:33, and then that 50-minute segment rather, and then we'll take another break at 2:48, and then we'll come back for a 7-minute segment to wrap up the show.
Okay, that sounds great.
Perfect.
And you have cool glasses, by the way. I'm Jim.
Oh, thank you. I like both of your glasses.
Cheers.
Great to meet you guys. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to put you guys back in the program feed, and we'll be off in a second.
And brunch is served all day every Sunday. Our weekly lunch and dinner menus highlight culinary traditions and cuisines from around the world. We offer vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free items every day. 90% of the ingredients used are from organic, local, and small-scale producers whenever possible. Learn more at sewer.coop.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for cloudy skies today with a high near 28, tonight cloudy with a low around 25, and Thursday partly sunny with a high near 33. Nightingale offers a warm, inviting atmosphere with a full menu of American classics like the famous Nightingale Burger and Fries, Ginger Tamari Chicken Wings, and Duck Pastrami Reuben. They're open daily from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. with a full menu available until midnight. Takeout orders also are welcome. Learn more at nightingalempls.com.
You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. This is the Gaily Show. I'm your host, JP Derpagosian. In studio with me is our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey,
in the control room, our producer, Brett Johnson.
Hey
Brett.
again there.
Hey. And joining us now is Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. The Washington Blade was founded in 1969 as a black and white one-sheet community newsletter distributed in D.C. area bars, and then became the publication of record of the queer community in Washington, D.C. Today, you can read the Washington Blade in print, online at washingtonblade.com, on your mobile devices, and on a variety of social media platforms. They cover national, international news, plus they continue to serve the D.C. area LGBTQ community. We are very lucky and grateful that their White House correspondent, Christopher Kane, is here with us today. Christopher, welcome to the Gaily Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so I guess maybe we should start with the incoming administration. You were in the White House correspondent pool covering Trump's first term and then the Biden administration. What are you seeing as Trump 2.0 gets started?
So, I actually came in midway through the Biden administration, so I haven't actually covered...
JP, get your facts straight.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I covered the Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department under Trump, but I was covering antitrust, so it was a little not so much focused on politics. So to answer your question, though, the new Republican administration is, the new Congress has just been seated. This was the second full week in session, and next week, obviously, we have the inauguration on Monday. So we're expecting a lot of changes. It's been a flurry of news. I'm sure that you're following confirmation hearings. It's been quite a busy time as we prepare for the transition here.
I'm limiting myself on the confirmation hearings because I can't. We have one of our hosts watched all 4 hours of it yesterday, and I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? Because it's just a train wreck.
Oh, absolutely. It's too much to keep up with.
It really is. Okay, so breaking yesterday, we were talking about this earlier in the show, but breaking yesterday, the House passed a law banning transgender students from competing in girls and women's sports in all schools. This is Project 2025, and obviously we're seeing it coming fast and furious right out of the gate. Can you share more from your reporting on this ban and where this fits into their larger Project 2025 agenda?
Sure. So this is not the first time that we've seen this. So the House in 2023 passed the very same bill. It's called, I believe, the Protecting Girls and Women's Sports Act or something like that. So containing the exact same language. We also saw Trump make this promise during the campaign that he would, if elected, effectuate a ban through executive action. And the way that people believe that would happen is that he would direct the education department to find schools that allow trans women and girls to compete in violation of Title IX. So we've seen this coming for a while, and the bill still faces an uncertain prospect of passage through the Senate. Even their Republicans have just been seated with their new majority in the chamber. So we'll see what happens, but it looks pretty likely now that this is going to happen one way or another.
You need 60 votes to get over the filibuster. So does it seem more likely that this will come from the administration through the Department of Education, or does this bill actually have a shot of getting through the Congress?
It's a bit early to say. I think the way to look at this might be that the executive action is the surest shot at doing this. But of course, if they want to do something that would be harder to replace or to repeal, doing that legislatively would be the approach they would want to take. So.
Got it. Since the catastrophe, or otherwise known as the election, a lot of companies like McDonald's and Walmart, Ford, Harley Davidson, Molson, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, all rolling back their DEI and LGBTQ employment practices and policies. Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, joined the bandwagon. I guess my first question is, when the Biden administration was coming in and during their tenure, did we see companies falling over backwards to ingratiate themselves with him like we're seeing with these companies now with Trump? Can you speak to that?
I think you're absolutely right to point that out. I don't think that we saw, but I think another way of putting it might be that we saw a lot more tension between private industry and the first Trump administration than we're seeing now. And I think at this stage, it's not quite clear yet whether this procession of CEOs that we've seen traveling to Mar-a-Lago to have an audience with the president-elect are in it for essentially reasonable reasons related to the health and success of their companies, or whether it's something a little bit more transactional in a quid pro quo kind of way. I think that's something that we should look out for in the coming months as the president is seated.
It seems like to me, and you've been doing some great reporting on this, it seems like the two things that these CEOs are offering, one, cash for the ceremonies, and the other is dropping their LGBTQ policies or going a step further, which is what Meta is doing, and basically saying, hey, it's free reign. You want to say the worst horrible things about the queer community, come to our platforms and you can do all of that. It seems like those are the two things they're using to appease him and to ingratiate themselves with him. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that is right. And we also saw, it was around the time, I think it was the same week actually, that Trump met with Jeff Yass, who's an investor, a billionaire many times over, and an early investor in TikTok with, I believe his holding company has, I think, like 15% ownership of the company. In any case, so he met with Trump, and then quickly thereafter, Trump reversed his position on TikTok So I think we certainly can expect to see more of that moving forward. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It just it seems like the two ways that they are is giving money and hating the gays is the two things, and it's just that I think is surprising to me. That these are the two ways. I mean, is it surprising though? I guess that those are the two ways of demonstrating fealty and kissing the ring, so to speak.
So I think one way of seeing this, it's interesting. Mark Zuckerberg gave an interview recently. I can't remember where it was, but he was talking about the way that getting to know the MMA world has shifted his views on a lot of things having to do with DEI. So he has become under the impression now that there's discrimination against men, that, I mean, he's much more sympathetic to a lot of those kinds of ideas, which I think has made him drift to the right. But we've certainly seen really surprising changes at Meta, whereas, it was not that long ago that Mark Zuckerberg was considered a Democrat. He's, has pretty liberal policy positions on matters like immigration. And he was also notoriously very close with the Obama administration. So it's definitely an interesting shift that we're seeing.
Do you have any insight into maybe why?
Beyond the MMA stuff that I just mentioned, I really don't. It's obviously he does have a financial interest in getting along with the administration and with their new Republican Congress. So it's certainly in the best interest of Meta for him to be cozying up to the administration.
Okay. There was a settlement from the Department of Defense with the Pentagon, which I guess, yes, is part of defense, with LGBTQ service members who have been wrongfully discharged or discriminated against. What can you tell us about that?
So this is a part of a long-standing effort by the Biden-Harris administration to restore justice for service members who were separated from the military other than honorably, which denies them access in many cases to veterans benefits, housing, things like that. So this is a really big deal. It's something that the administration has been working on for a long time across a variety of fronts. This summer, we saw Joe Biden issue pardons to military members, veterans who had been court-martialed over their sexual orientation. So that was a big step in that direction. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next administration. I really don't know whether the program and the actions that have been undertaken to upgrade the paperwork of those veterans will continue, or how that might change.
Well, the the secretary is going to be drunk most of the time, apparently. So maybe he won't even get to it. But what you're sharing there actually segues beautifully into reporting that you have done about the Biden administration and their legacy as it relates to the LGBTQ community. And I think that so much of his administration and his record has been completely obscured by MAGA, obviously, and their political communication machine, but also a lot of corporate media that just doesn't care about, they want to talk about Trump all the time, and they didn't do anything to talk about Biden and his accomplishments. So you've done some really great reading your work on the Washington Blades website around assessing Biden's record as it relates to the LGBTQ community. So one, can you remind us about those? Two, can you share a lot of stuff that I think I was reading? I'm like, I had no idea that he did that.
There's so much there. There's just a wealth of information. We could look at policy and regulation. Things that he did during his administration range from, passage of the Respect for Marriage Act, which codified legal protections for married same-sex couples, to the FDA's updated blood donation guidelines, which will allow more gay and bisexual men to donate blood. There are things all up and down the federal government and the various agencies. The Education Department, this is a pretty big one, clarified Title IX rules such that it was made clear that sex-based discrimination includes, for purposes of public schools and institutions, discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, as well as it's traditionally understood. So there was a lot that he did as president, as vice president as well. We all remember in 2012, I think, when he got over his skis on the gay marriage issue and beat Barack Obama to the punch as Obama was evolving towards supporting same-sex marriage. So there's a wealth of stuff there, and I think what I enjoyed reporting the story that I published this week was focusing a lot on his words as well, because Biden was very outspoken on matters of transgender rights in a way that he wasn't when you look at something like abortion. Because Biden is a devout Catholic, he was always a little bit squeamish on that issue. And so even though it would have been politically advantageous for him to talk more openly and more often and more vocally about abortion, we didn't hear that as much from him. And the contrast between that and the way that he's talked about trans rights, I think, is remarkable.
Why do you think that is? I mean, so I've seen photos of you talking with him in the Oval, right?
Yes. So I interviewed him in the Oval Office in September. About his legacy on LGBTQ rights, and we went through a lot of the policies and moves and successes that he's had as president over the last 4 years. And he really, you could tell from talking with him that he really cared deeply and that he was very passionate and sincere and engaged. So I think what we're really seeing is his true character.
What? I guess, how would you assess him versus Obama? I think that we're going to find his presidential term to be much more transformational than we're giving it credit for right now. I think we're going to, 4 years from now, 5 years, 10 years from now, we're going to look back and go, wow, there was a lot of stuff there. Do you think that it was more so than the transformational than the Obama administration was?
In terms of LGBTQ rights, do you mean?
Yes. Yes.
I think so, although it is a bit hard to gauge because, of course, during the Obama years, the fight for marriage was really reaching its zenith, and the repeal of Dole National, which happened in 2012. Those were such major milestones that it's almost hard to compare the two because we didn't have something like that during the Biden administration.
We are going to come up on a break here. When we come back, I'd love to hear about your own journey as a White House correspondent and maybe how you're stealing yourself for what's about to happen, and how you go about you doing the work that you do, because it's absolutely spot on, wonderful work. As someone who used to be in broadcast journalism on the television side of things, y'all, Christopher Kane, the real deal here, and you need to be reading his work at the Washington Blade. One last break that we have to get to, and then we will be back. Support our sponsors who keep progressive news and analysis on the air. More with Christopher Kane from the Washington Blade after this break. You're listening to The Gaily Show.
Eight years ago, over 100,000 Minnesotans marched to the state capitol, standing together to defend women's rights, immigrants' rights, queer rights, and justice for all. Now, as our freedoms face new threats under an incoming administration built on oppression and divisiveness, it's time to stand together again. Join the People's March on January 18th at the Minnesota State Capitol. Together, we'll send a clear and unmistakable message: we will not go back. Building on the legacy of the Women's March Minnesota, this year's event will include a march to the Capitol and a rally. You'll connect with Minnesota organizations working to protect our rights. These organizations need your support, not just now, but over the next 4 years and beyond. The weather may be cold, but our commitment is unbreakable. The stakes are too high to stay silent. Let's show the strength of our voices as we fight for Minnesota's future. Again, that's the People's March on Saturday, January 18th at the state capitol. Details at womensmarchmn.com.
Hi, I'm Philip Anthony, host of the Downright Upright Show, airing right here on AM 950 radio, Saturdays at 5 p.m. Join me as I dive into captivating conversations with people from all walks of life. As a proud member of the LGBTQ community, I celebrate diversity and beyond with unique stories that make us fantabulous. Please join me every Saturday at 5 p.m. or wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you go to shoprainbowrd.com, you will find an amazing variety of adult novelties, literally thousands of items that you can peruse in the privacy of your home and have shipped to your door. Plus, in the store, you can find swimwear, casual wear, underwear, everywhere. Rainbow Road is located at 109 West Grand Street near Loring Park. Gift cards are available for the hard to shop for. Go to shoprainbowrd.com.
Hi, this is Frank Brown of Minuteman Press Uptown with a question for our listeners. How important are business values to you? When you need high-quality digital print, it matters who you work with. You see, Minuteman Uptown is unique. We're one of the only union print shops in Minnesota providing our team with living wages and benefits. We believe in second chances for justice-impacted individuals who want to contribute to the community, and we are active in local issues. We've been in the streets standing up for racial, social, and economic justice. At Minuteman Uptown, our mission is to connect all communities through technology-driven print solutions. An example of that mission is when I moved Minuteman Uptown to North Minneapolis. We're invested in this local community, and we help small businesses and local organizations throughout the Twin Cities reach their audiences. Reach out to Minuteman Uptown and partner with a printer that shares your values. Call us today at 612-870-0777 or visit us at mpuptown.com. That's mpuptown.com.
Welcome back to the Gaily Show. With us is White House correspondent for the Washington Blade, Christopher Kane. So, Christopher, talk to me. I want to hear about your approach as a reporter, as a correspondent. How are you prepping for this administration and covering it?
Well, that's a very good question. So, I don't have very much intel or even gossip to share about what things are going to look like, beginning next week. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. But there's so many dynamics that go into being in the press room, and I'm expecting that my job is going to become a lot more important, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time attending press briefings and trying to access White House officials during this administration, because we expect, frankly, that it's going to be adversarial. So.
I am curious, what was your interaction? What were your interactions like with Karine Jean-Pierre, I'm blanking on her name, the White House press secretary, first queer White House press secretary, and I'm blanking on her name. How horrible is that? But how was your experience working with her?
I have nothing but good things to say about Karine. She was lovely. I had the opportunity actually to profile her, so I got to interview her in her office, which was very cool. And then it was kind of a surreal moment when she was staffing the president during my interview with him, because I had just challenged the White House to interview her, and that was a big deal. So it was quite a wow moment. But no, I mean, I've seen that there's kind of a lot of frustration with, and this is always the case, but with who gets called on and how often and when. But we saw, and this also is typical, that reporters who are impolite and rude and shout down their colleagues or demand attention, it doesn't tend to get you very far. So it always helps to have a productive relationship.
Do we know who the incoming press secretary is, and who's going to play them in SNL?
That'll be a good question. I cannot remember her name for the life of me. This is bad, but the only thing I remember about her is that she's 27 years old, because
what?
I know. It's kind of amazing.
No.
I believe she worked on the Trump campaign. I think she might have been a deputy campaign manager.
Wow.
Her name is Caroline Leavitt.
Oh, thank you.
K, the youngest ever White House press secretary.
Do you guys think she's going to last long?
Well, they just kind of cycled through in the first administration, so
That's how I remember it. It was like every week there was a new resignation.
Every week. Do you anticipate that's going to be the same this time around? Now that we know that they're literally going through different agencies and interviewing staffers there and longtime folks about their loyalty to the president, do you think we're going to see a lot of churn, or do you think that they're all being loyalty vetted and they're going to stick around for the entire time?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So on the one hand, let me think that through for a minute. on the one hand, there are a lot of kind of warring factions in Trump world. And there's a lot of backstabbing, and we saw that in the last administration. And I think that remains true. So it's almost easy to overestimate the extent to which there's total cohesion and everybody's getting along. So in that sense, perhaps not. At the same time, I think there will be less, I think there'll be more resistance to pressure, like from the press for, say a cabinet member is involved in some scandal. I think there's going to be a lot less pressure for that to lead to any consequences.
Something that I appreciate about your reporting and the Blade writ large is that you don't fall for the circus. Like your Times, your Washington Post, your MSNBCs, where they're basically sort of some of them are sort of Trump panic network. Tune in for our clickbait headlines for why you should be panicking today, and he said this now, and this person did this. I just want to say thank you for doing real reporting where you're not falling for that. I mean, how do you all think about that as you're selecting from the dumpster fire of how to? Because we know, I mean, it's oodles and oodles. I mean, it's like a fire hose of stuff. I mean, I can't imagine now being an assignment editor and covering the White House. Like, which do you pick and choose for what to follow? Like, what are you using as your sort of benchmark?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm having a 4 p.m. coffee here, so that's the kind of week that I'm having. It's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. I think the fact that we're a small newsroom in some ways is advantageous because we don't have to cover as much of the horse races. When there was the battle, for example, over the speakership, which time? I mean, the time with Kevin McCarthy, more recent with Mike Johnson. There were a lot of reporters who were covering every single movement, every single candidate that emerged, all of that. And we were able to wait until a decision had been reached until we covered it. So that's one advantage that we have.
Well, it's an advantage that benefits all of us.
I'm glad to hear it.
Did you have a question, Jim?
Well, I know one person in the federal, and I asked him this question. What was their trepidation? And I wondered if his response was typical of government folks, where they always see these transitions to a new administration as being, just the clown car going by, no matter who it is, in a way. A true bureaucrat just sits there and does their thing, right? And isn't as easily influenced. I think a lot of this is show business, and that was sort of his feeling too, that there are ideologues who I'm sure are going to be very dangerous, but a lot of it is just to distract, like he's trying to do now, from the terrible choices he's made for the cabinet by talking about something else. That's his whole MO is distraction. And so as JP said, congratulations to you for trying to see through that fog and tell us what's really important, because it certainly isn't anything that comes out of his mouth, in my opinion.
Well, we are coming up at the end of our time for the show. And with Christopher, this has been an absolute delight. I know we've got you booked on the calendar for 2 weeks from today. I can't wait for that. And also the inauguration will be done. So I can't wait to hear your reporting from that as well. Christopher Kane, White House correspondent for the Washington Blade. Head to Washington Blade. I just had it up here, WashingtonBlade.com. There it is. And you can read all of his original reporting. Folks, stay tuned for the Matt McNeil Show coming up next. And then after that, Native Roots Radio. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Greg Bakken here. Like you, I love good, fresh